So, good afternoon. I'm Michael Jones. I am the founder and president of TMA BlueTech. We want to welcome you to the second of our two events, very specifically to reach out to our potential partners in Asia Pacific. And on Monday, we had individuals from Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and a representative of the state of Victoria in Australia as well. And as I explained on Monday, we also reached out to a number of other countries, including the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, and New Zealand. And at one point or another, all of them have shown interest in cluster development. I should rephrase that. Some of them have shown interest. Vietnam, New Zealand. We're just exploring that in Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia. So we will continue to reach out because our hope is that there will be a blossoming of clusters in Asia Pacific that will allow us, both we, TMA BlueTech, also the BlueTech Cluster Alliance, to work with partners in Asia Pacific. Those are dynamic, innovative areas of the world, and we want them to be an integral part of the future of clusters and of the BlueTech Cluster Alliance as well. So what we thought we would do this afternoon, again, this is the first time we've done this, is talk about three different areas. One will be autonomous platforms and sensors. And then, as some of you know, I started a company with two partners, and I'll explain that just as an example. And on Monday, we had another one of our member companies that talked about their company, Marine Advanced Robotics. And then we have two renewable energy companies, Seatrek and Aker Solutions. So we'll have each of them make short presentations. We'll keep the presentation short. Mine will be about 5 minutes. Hopefully each of them will be about 5 minutes. And then we will talk about ocean energy and cleanup. This is not to clean up the whole ocean. This is to give one example of a company that is in our orbit. And we want you to know about both that company, but we want to learn from you, from our partners in Asia, what their needs are and what technologies they're developing. It might be that we can help find partners in the United States or elsewhere in the world, because at the end of the day, there are great technologies being developed everywhere, and the needs are everywhere. So we had a great day today, and I'm going to turn it over to Craig Mclean to be our moderator of today. And as all of you know from the last couple of days, Craig is the Assistant Administrator for Research at NOAA, and he has been a stalwart at BlueTech Week for a number of years. And I should say that it's 8 p.m. on the East Coast where he is, so he is with us from 8 to 10 p.m. So he's really going the extra mile to be with us from 7:30 in the morning with us to 7 in the evening with us here, but later for him. So Craig, thank you very much again for all your support, and I'll hand it over to you to kind of shepherd us through this evening.
Very fine, Michael. Thank you so much. And to our friends and colleagues who are joining us from the Asia Pacific region, I'd like to return to the theme that Michael offered, and it's something that we look at in our global science outlook and also our global economic outlook, frankly. We truly believe in what is happening here with TMA BlueTech, and we truly believe that the technology clusters and the alignments around the globe of similarly interested parties has really the key to developing and prospering the blue economy. And the blue economy really brings us to the point of sustainability. We want to enjoy the fruits of the ocean without damaging the ocean. And we recognize that many economies, many of them in the Asia Pacific region, are growing in levels of maturity and sophistication, trying to develop and deliver prosperity to the people of many countries, but to not damage the ocean to a point where utilization has caused a decline in the state of the ocean. I think we all recognize that the state of the ocean is one that is concerning because of our human activity worldwide. And for those nations who have already developed, we each have done some damage to the oceans in the way that we have designed our outlook, that we have been a product-oriented society without giving due consideration to the byproducts of those undertakings. And if we can convert to a truly circular economy, as we heard this morning, for those of you who might have perhaps been able to join us, where we were inspired by John Bell, who gave a keynote this morning on the outlook of the European Union, with some very progressive policies and some keen ideas. But we look to the idea of bringing the ocean back to a better state of health so the ocean can sustain our utilization of renewable resources. And I think I'll bring up what will be the third of the presentations from Brian Bauer that talks about cleanup of the oceans and what technologies exist for us to clean the oceans. As we measure the ocean, as we want to study the ocean to look at the health of the ocean, consider, if you will, this ocean of ours being a patient, and we are overseeing the health of the patient. We can measure the pulse, the respiration, literally, of the ocean through photosynthesis, through oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange. We measure that through a number of sensing capabilities, and we are always, always on the look for better sensing capabilities, for greater density of observations, and sustaining the accuracy, if not increasing the accuracy of our observations. So much as a medical doctor might monitor the patient, so do we in looking at the health of the ocean, because it's a healthy ocean that will produce a sustainable blue economy in the future. If we utilize the ocean to the point of damage, we will not have, indeed, a sustainable future. But while we look at the pulse and the respiration, we also need the Gray's anatomy. We need the skeletal framework map of the ocean. And as I'm sure many of you recognize, we, the citizens of the world, still do not have a good high-resolution map of the world ocean. So measuring all of those gets us to the point of forms and sensors. There are not enough research vessels in the world, and there are not enough ocean scientists in the world to close the information gap that we need to provide the science that will feed the business and the industry opportunities to present a sustainable blue economy. We need to do this quickly, because until we reverse the direction of decline that we're in, we're missing the opportunity to save the ocean to a point of sustainability, and we're missing the opportunity to gain a business-based advantage, whether you're a sensor manufacturer, whether you are a maker of autonomous equipment, or in another subject that came up today, which inspires me, a big data utilizer or big data enabler. With many of these data sets that exist and have been compiled over decades, there's much understanding of the ocean to be learned that can give a smart business approach an opportunity to be informing aquaculture, marine farming, energy offshore. Much of what we need to know by information will be science acquired and then delivered to a community of business-minded people who can really bring that sustainable blue economy and the blue technology. And perhaps just a word as well on the international nature of the technology clusters, which TMA BlueTech has really brought into focus and given birth to this international network. The opportunity to join in the clusters is continually present and open and available. And there are some criteria that one would require. But what to me is the greatest opportunity is that going it alone to try and work with a single nation and a single nation's mindset, or a single nation's exclusive economic zone as the domain of activity, is short-sighted. This is a global undertaking with a global community, and the technical solutions we seek are global in application. What I have seen with these technology clusters is not competition, but mutual support, learning, and encouragement. And I think the opportunity for the Asia Pacific region to join in this discussion, to join in the support for generating technology clusters in the region is huge. The Pacific Ocean, if you manipulate Google Earth in a sufficient manner, you can rotate Earth and basically see just a tiny sliver of land masses, and it's all ocean in one complete hemispherical face of the ocean. It's astounding, the ocean area of the Pacific. It is astounding, the prosperity of these ocean areas. The coral health in the Pacific is still reasonably healthy, while other areas in the world are declining. And the opportunity for prosperity in the Pacific, including feeding many populations that are dependent upon coral-based fishery resources and the like, is very much upon us. Offshore renewable energy in this large ocean area is a keen opportunity. There are many, the list is long, and you'll hear a few of those ideas from tonight's speakers, or this afternoon or this morning's speakers, depending upon your time zone. I'm sorry. But we'll have an opportunity to really see that these technologies are applicable in all the world's oceans, and that the ripeness, the opportunity to participate for the Asia Pacific region is very high, because we currently have a lot of interest in that community, but until establishing the idea of joining the technology cluster and the approach to the collaborative nature of this undertaking, I think that opportunity will be a reward for those who choose to join and to assert themselves. So with that in mind, as I complete the summation for what we discussed today of autonomous equipment, we'll return to that theme very shortly here tonight with none other than Michael Jones leading us through that. To be looking at alternative energy, whether it be hydrokinetic or wind, in a circular economy where there is no harmful, damaging byproduct of that energy generation, where we're looking at water, where many of the populations of the world, but certainly including the Asia Pacific region, will continue to face, as sea level rises and saltwater intrusion impacts drinking water and water necessary for agriculture and land-based growth. Where are the solutions for water? We had an interesting topic earlier today on international collaboration, which is right where we are now in dealing with the recruitment of interest from multiple nations. Again, not to compete, but to collaborate and to share experiences, share marketing opportunities, and share technologies across international boundaries where everyone wins, everyone prospers. The technology brought to the citizens of a country is a win. The business opportunity of the participants is a win. So I really am a fan of this, as you can tell. And in my job at NOAA, we're very much behind the notion of promoting a blue economy, because it means that we raise the economic prosperity of many nations and many people. And it also means that we take care of the ocean in a proper, a positive, and constructive way. So to start off on how we're going to measure that ocean to make sure that it stays healthy and prosperous, and that we can even be cleaning up the ocean, I'm going to ask Michael if he would like to begin the first presentation here in dealing with autonomous platforms and sensors, and to share with us some of the new technology that he's involved with. So Michael, thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. If Melissa can pull up my presentation. Today, I was one of 6 speakers on a panel on surface robotics and sensors. And then there was another panel on underwater sensors. So this is just one of many very innovative companies that were participating this year in the BlueTech Week. And I will explain what we are doing, again, because we are interested in partners in Asia Pacific as well. So Melissa, can you bring up my slides?
Sorry, Michael, I'm not sure why it's always your slides that give me an issue, but I am working on bringing it up. So I'm in the background. I'll mute and I will bring.
Okay. Well, while we're doing that, again, I'll just make the observation. We had a track today that had, I think, 5 panels on it. And we're only giving you one company out of, 25 probably that presented. And they presented on the importance of connectors. We had 3 very interesting small companies talking about really innovation in cables and connectors, because without those, people like me making robots are held up. We had underwater sensors, big data, gathering information, and of course, robots on the surface and sensors, which is where the company that I started with 2 partners 3.5 years ago live. So Melissa, do you want us to go to something else and come back?
Sorry, Michael, I promise I'm working on it. It's just when I have to toggle back and forth on the mute. So you can just give me one more moment. I'm really sorry.
Well, while we're doing that, I'll just mention that this about a week ago in the Shizuoka province of our prefecture in Japan, they inaugurated their new building and with a marine observation institute, Maoi, and I was honored to be asked to say some words. So I couldn't be there in person, but it is wonderful to see how they're moving forward to create a cluster. And they told me that they already have 80 members, and I think that's been inside of 1 year. So very admirable progress. And then a year ago, a year and a half ago now, I was in Korea and in both Seoul and Busan, and had a chance to meet with the Korea Maritime Institute. And we are fortunate to have one of the executives, Hangmoy Jeon, is with us, and they showed me a new building that they were building, where there will be space for an incubator and accelerator. So the kinds of things that we're talking about here are being echoed all around the world. And we have the opportunity for companies that are in one accelerator or incubator, if there are relationships already established, to work across those clusters, across accelerators. And we, as a cluster, consider ourselves a virtual accelerator. And then we also have a physical incubator. However, right now with COVID, it is unfortunately not active. Nobody wants to go there because of the COVID-19 risk. So we look forward to working with both Japan and Korea, and of course, as Taiwan moves forward, hopefully toward a cluster, that will be something on your agenda as well. And I don't know if you noticed, but Joyce Tang from the U.S. Commercial Service was on the seminar, on the webinar on Monday. So she is an employee of the U.S. government in Taiwan with the U.S. Commercial Service. And so it was exciting to see her be with us on Monday. So we had, I think, 3 people from the Commercial Service with us on Mondays, showing the interest they have to promote the relationships between the United States and Asia Pacific. Melissa, would you like me to find this on my side?
If you don't mind, Michael, honestly, I tested this prior an hour ago and everything was working fine. So the only thing is if you can you see that now or no? Are you able to see it, what I was sharing?
Nope. Let me see if I can share, and then if not, we'll let somebody else speak.
Okay. And you can't see that, correct?
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that.
So this is a company that I started 3.5 years ago with 2 partners. I'm going to go through this very quickly. It's just to give you an example of one company. And if you are interested, we of course will be happy to talk to you about this company, but other companies that are part of the BlueTech Cluster Alliance. That is a picture of a vessel we sold to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It's not a drawing. Next, Melissa. Obviously, the ocean is a lonely place. It's enormous. And we believe that what we need to do is be able to observe everywhere, constantly. And the only way to do that is to get 100% energy harvesting, long duration platforms and sensors that are affordable enough that they can be used in any marine institute anywhere in the world, not just the developed countries, but developing countries as well. So our goal is to drive the price down of vessels and sensors. Next, please. Again, that's the picture. We make unique, capable vessels. They are completely scalable, so they can get bigger. And we're also, if you look in the lower right-hand corner, going to be looking at multi-hull cargo variants. And on Friday, we applied for a provisional patent on a new kind of a wing sail for a multi-hulled vessel. We have 3 U.S. patents, including having a wing sail above the water and then all the weight below the water. By doing that, we have virtually no skin friction and no wake. So we're essentially an invisible vessel. You look through our wing sail, we have no heat signature, we have no radar signature, and we are ultra quiet. We don't even have slapping of water against the hull. And then we have another patent, provisional patent pending that I'll talk about in a minute. Of course, the Sustainable Development Goals are very important to us. Next, please. I won't go through all of this. Upper left-hand corner in that green circle, our wing sail is hollow. That's so that we can go underwater. Otherwise, it'd be like a balloon. The second thing is we have a wing sail control mechanism, which is patented. There are no motors, there's no lines, there's no pulleys. It is a unique way to control a wing sail. And then we really only have one moving part constantly, and that is a servo that manages our rudder. And imagine that this, what you see underwater can take any shape. It can look like a whale, a stingray. It depends on what it is you want to move. Obviously, there are the laws of physics, but there are things that we can do in terms of size of wing sails that will allow us to move almost any size or create offshore payload areas as well. You can see on the right-hand side that we are going to be changing that the flotation area so that we can completely submerge. Next, please. There are many applications. I won't go through those, but there are for academia, they are for military, they are for government like NOAA and NASA and the European Space Agency that need to ground truth what's going on at the water. You can see our vessel, at least you can see the wing sail, but you see no wake, although that is moving. Next, please. We applied about 5 months ago for a provisional patent on a new kind of an acoustic array. It is reconfigurable, it's rigid, and that solves, being on our ultra quiet vessel, 2 of the problems with arrays. So we will have the processing right on the array, and the array will cost, in the United States at least, about $30,000 compared to traditional arrays that start at $140,000, $150,000 and go up into the millions depending on what you're trying to do. We believe that this array, which we have partnered on with a world-class acoustics company, will meet about 90% of needs. It will not meet certain finding very, very quiet submarine needs, but almost anything else, fast vessels, marine mammals. It has an enormous use where often you're being forced to buy different kinds of arrays to different things. We've really been able to create something we think quite unique. Next, please. We expect our vessel will be able to submerge, and we think that people will want to buy pairs of them. Two big advantages. One is that by going up and down the water column, we expect to eliminate largely biofouling. If you're down at 100 meters, what lives at the surface doesn't like to live at 100 meters, both the pressure and the darkness. But this is a way for us to understand temperature anywhere along the way, 90 meters, 80 meters, 70 meters. We can gather information at the surface, above the surface on our mast. We can communicate with a vessel underwater acoustically, gathering information, and of course having processing in our array gives it some very unique capabilities. So this is to us an easily deployable mobile acoustic and sensor barrier, depending on what it is you're trying to identify. Next, please. So I'll just make one comment here and then I'm done. Two comments I'll make. One is that in this new COVID world, we are trying to make sure that people do not have to travel to see us, and I don't have to send people to companies to train them. We're trying to do it like a Sony TV or a Sanyo coming right out of the box that works. And we are creating a dealer network. And so for those of you in your countries, we're looking for good distributors and dealers. And then the last comment is that we are looking at applications for our technology for multi-hulls that can sail quickly on the surface, but will be able to also submerge. And the advantage of that, you know, two vessels are stolen by pirates every single day somewhere in the world. And there are more storms, and the storms are becoming much more violent. And so the ability to hide underwater from bad actors and bad weather and to deliver goods when the weather is better, but wait while it's not good, we think will be extraordinarily important. And for humanitarian aid, for expeditionary forces, for remote islands, inter-island, whole series of applications. And wind is going to be one of the ways that we move ocean cargo. So thank you very much. Again, this is just an example of one of our member companies. It just happens to be one that I'm involved with, and we wanted to give you one idea. So with that, we have time then to talk about what your needs are. So if we could take that down, Melissa, and just bring back up all the people. Greg, I'll leave it over to you then. Greg, you're on mute.
Sorry, Michael. I wanted to make sure I wasn't making any background noise as I was expressing my personal enthusiasm for your presentation here, but because I've seen your vehicle and I'm impressed with the vehicle and what utility it can serve. So if we can go to perhaps the chat and see if anyone has any questions that they would like to put in the chat. But while that's happening, Michael, you're on the West Coast of the United States, you're on the Pacific Ocean, and you have traveled widely. Can you see maybe a handful of applications for this vehicle or similar vehicles in the world of the Pacific as you know it, where you might be looking at coral productivity, fishery productivity, mapping in areas where conventional ships can't be, some ideas perhaps where the market potential, the utilization potential of such a unique vehicle as this, though scalable, including the small and the large, might be useful?
All the things you said are possible, but I'll focus on one, which is combating IUU. And I received an email today from one of the world's biggest NGOs. Someone had forwarded information about our vessel, and they were talking about the enormous areas that are almost impossible to control and manage. And they were as interested in our reconfigurable passive acoustic array as they were in the vessel, because the two together will, and the ability to submerge, means that we don't have to run away from bad weather, typhoons in Asia. And I was talking with the CTO of one of the world's leading cargo delivery companies, and he said, you know, we're not worried about bad weather. The weather predictions have gotten so good that we know days in advance, if not a week in advance, of bad weather. We run from the weather. He said that's not good for delivery. So if I can go underwater and then come back up and keep doing my mission, rather than be carried 100 miles or 200 miles away by a typhoon, then obviously the productivity goes way up. If I have a disruptively priced vessel, then again, that means you can put out 10 of them instead of 1 or 2. And the issue with arrays typically are that they're long and they have kind of fingers, and you can't turn very quickly. In our case, this is a rigid array that can be reconfigured as you need it, 2-axis, 3-axis, to do all kinds of things. And so we will be able to listen for things. You know, what you were there, I think, yesterday when they talked about the acoustics, where they could hear things hundreds of miles away. And so because sound propagates so well in the water, we are confident that we will be able to hear IUU infringers coming in and be able to relay signals before they hopefully even arrive. We will have a camera on the mast. You know, we're up 1.5 meters. We'll have light, camera. We'll have a weather station if somebody wants it. So we can be a full service weather station, also listening for IUU. We'll know what the waves are like, the direction, the severity. These are all things that we are going to be able to have in our vessel at a price point that's way below anything anybody's ever produced. And the vessel is 28 kilos, so it's 62, 64 pounds before you start adding much to it, but call it 70 pounds. It's very easy to deploy, very easy to use, and disruptively affordable. So we'll be able to listen for marine mammals. We'll be able to work with commenting IUU, which is the inquiry I received today. But all the things you talked about, like any surface vessel, it's just that we've got a couple of extra capabilities: our weight, our size, our ability to submerge, our cost. But you know, we're going to be one of the tools that will be available for people to do things they need to do in the ocean.
Michael, one of the attributes that I must mention is that the vehicle, by its design, with a rigid acoustic device, or an ability to measure with sound and listen by sound, you've eliminated the hull noise, correct?
Yes.
And that's a very limiting factor for many other devices, whether it be a buoy or whether it be a surface vessel, to the point where submerged buoys are the alternative to getting the surface noise and disruption. So in terms of ocean mapping and coastal mapping, which is often much more important for ocean acidification and for coastal dynamics, having such a shallow draft and readily maneuverable device to be conducting that mapping is to me a pretty appealing piece of gear. Have you seen much success, or are there challenges at all that you've seen that from an engineering perspective you would like to address and overcome?
Well, you never have enough money and enough engineers, and there's always electrical issues. Yi Chao is smiling because we all face that. Our goal now is not to repair it in the field, it's to try and make it bulletproof. And I think traditionally in this industry, we've had a tendency to say good enough is good enough. And then you had people come to visit the company and you train them. And then you send somebody in the field and you train them. And I think that COVID-19 is forcing us to rethink how we go to market, how we work with our partners in other countries. And so we have embraced that and are trying to figure out how to make sure that it comes out of the box, is simple to use, and will work every time. And I'd like to just do a shout out to Yi Chao because he's going to be presenting his technology. And he has, when he's not moving up and down the water column, he's also got a ultra quiet platform. And so our array could be attached to his floater and can be used at multiple layers. We're only assuming today that we'll go down to about 100 meters. And we're not navigating underwater, we will just hang out. So we can do that at 50 meters or 60 meters, or the thermocline is often around 100 meters. We want to get down below it for reasons of listening to what's deeper as well as what's on near the surface. But we'll be able to take measurements all along the way, depending on what's in our cone. The acoustic array will have no problem going to 100 meters or greater. And so we will find people like Yi Chao that have a wonderful vessel that's ultra quiet like ours is, where we hopefully will create a partnership and then we'll be able to help him listen, or his clients listen, in places as well.
Michael, as you mentioned, price point, it is once again inspiring to me to realize that a developing market or a developing economy can find at a greatly reduced cost what otherwise would require a half dozen, maybe a dozen crew members who you have to feed, and you need fuel, and you need habitation, accommodation, and the like, and to be propelling a hull through the water as opposed to the vehicle that you've shown us here that actually transits through the water without the surface resistance. So what may be an unaffordable and tall mountain to climb economically could be a very affordable either surveillance device for local enforcement protection, for fishery conservation zones, or for mapping or other domestic applications. So I find this to be a very inspiring opportunity. The entire community that you represent here of scalable autonomous vehicles is really what I think is going to take us through the next decade, where the quest for more observations and more information is urgent. It's absolutely urgent, because what we see, ladies and gentlemen, in this ocean world is a change that's occurring faster than we can even baseline our measurements to get a definitional measurement of what ecosystem health looks like. And tools like this, which are affordable, deployable, and I really liked your example, Michael, of making it like purchasing a television set. You open up the box, take the device out, plug it in, and it operates fully. And there's no sophisticated learning curve or otherwise, certainly not a mechanical curve or otherwise. So I'm inspired by this, and I truly believe that this is the type of technology that's going to be bringing us the needs we have in the coming decade here. And for those of you who are contemplating either a further business opportunity or are already present in the marine space, I hope you have your marketing plan developed for the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. As Michael mentioned, the Sustainable Development Goals in the front end of our time here together, the UN is behind this, and a decade of science to promote the blue economy or sustainable ocean use is right here upon us. And the governments of every country, 190 countries in the UN, 150 countries in the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, are behind this. And it's going to bring a state of mind of ocean presence that will be an additive value or additive incentive to participating in the blue economy. And that's an economy that's growing faster than the GDPs of just about every major developed country in the world. So,
Greg, I see Mr. Cowell had his hand up.
I'm sorry I missed that, Mr. Cowell. Please ask your question. Go ahead.
Yes. Good morning, gentlemen. I think the presentation of Michael is very interesting, especially in Taiwan. As you know, we have the offshore wind project, a very big project, but we need more sensor and the technology to observation about the oceanology. And also, the Bureau of Energy now have a project to set up how to pursue the marine and ocean technology can be set up in Taiwan. So actually, in earlier about 6 months ago, I have contact with them, Daniel, say if possible, I can invite Michael to Taiwan. We can talking and we can meet the request in Taiwan, the companies, but I say sorry, I'm because too busy. So this morning I have the look at the Michael's presentation. I have very interesting about this topic. So I will do my best to contact with the Bureau of Energy and how to promote to that this marine technology can set up. And Michael, do you have the interest in set up the office in Taiwan? As you know, in this generation and in this duration, Taiwan is request many automatic sensors observation in Taiwan, and then as you know, in the in the southeastern country, they also needs to set up many observation platform or the stations. So they have to try to contact with us, with Taiwan, how to cooperate with them. So I think if I think this topic we can talk we can negotiation, communicate in the future. Yeah, thank you.
Well, just because we are ending this portion, let me say that why don't you and Daniel and I set up a call maybe next week or the week after.
Yeah.
At this time, so it's the morning for you. I'll answer any questions you have, but I'll also talk to you about other of our member companies. Our vessel is good in certain places, particularly long distance, but there are other vessels that do an incredible job as well. So I will give you options because that's what I need to do as TMA BlueTech and what a cluster should do. So let's have a discussion. And I'm happy, and the answer is yes. I don't think we're going to set up an office, but we will look for a dealer or a distributor in Taiwan, and that could also work with other countries as well. So that would be wonderful. So Craig, I think that section, I'm trying to keep us on time. It's 5:45, and my understanding was we're supposed to move to offshore renewable energy.
Very good, Michael. Thank you. I'd like to conclude with the remark that you just made and repeat that. That is what clusters do. Clusters promote their awareness of the entire field, and it's a very collective and embracing community. So I strongly encourage levels of participation to advance this as quickly as we can. Speaking of advances, as quickly as we can, as we realize that the current method of producing global energy supplies is probably reaching a state of change in the future, much as we went from whale oil to petroleum products. We're going to be migrating from petroleum products to something that is truly sustainable without a harmful byproduct as we experience today. And looking at offshore renewable energy is a wave not just of the future, it is the present, it is happening now. I think that there's a tremendous opportunity for many countries to be accelerating their utilization and installation of this technology. But we have two speakers here that are going to take us on this journey. I believe Yi Chao is first, and then we'll get to Hans Potter Overik from Aker Solutions. But the CEO of CTREC, Yi Chao, may I give you the floor, please?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Melissa, we're bringing up my invitation. Thank you for the TMA staff to making this wonderful event. Early this morning, there was a session focused on offshore renewable energy. There are 7 presentations in that session. I guess I'm give you one of the examples of these half a dozen speakers were not able to present today. Some of those talks covering a variety of different renewable energy offshore. So some of the presentation talk about the wind. Almost half the presentation focus on the wave energy harvesting, ranging from the grid scale megawatts to micro grid scale powered islands on the kilowatts, all the way to watts and tens of watts of power ocean observing systems. So I'm going to give you an example how to harvest renewable energy from the ocean from the temperature difference so that we can power those underwater systems and sensors. And it doesn't really require a lot of the energy. And this is along the line of Craig's philosophies, being sustainable without harmful byproduct and then left behind in the ocean. So this technology was developed when I was working at NASA Jet Propulsion Lab in California Institute of Technology in Los Angeles. We developed this technology as a research project funded by the government. About 5-6 years or so, we developed the prototype and demonstrate the ocean test. Also generate the patent, a US patent belonged to the university. About 5 years ago, we started the commercialization effort. So I left the government and started the CTREC and to license the patent I have with the academic university and then try to develop the commercial product. So next slide, please. As Craig mentioned earlier, there's increasing demand for ocean information to make better decisions, and it can be simple warming of the ocean in response to climate change, all the way to the health of the ecosystem, the coral reef. So the data is a new gold for oceanography community to make better decisions. So you can tell in the last decade, we see a dramatic increase, order magnitude, more data being collected compared, say 20 years ago, primarily rely on ships and then very labor intensive, expensive operation, collect data at sea. So you can see it in the right-hand panel, see that the last 15 years or so, you see a dramatic increase of underwater autonomous sensors to deliver the data to the users for the decision making. Next slide. So this increase of the information is primarily thanks to the robotic revolution. Can be a lot of the surface vehicle like Michael described. And then what I try to focus on today is this underwater vehicles. And there's 3 different classes I highlighted here with the increasing power supply, increasing cost, increasing capabilities. Can be a simple vertical profiling floats and used by the Argo programs. This float is disposable. You can drop in this at sea. I'm collecting about 100 profiles, and then battery dies, you put in a new one. So there are about 4,000 of these already in the water at part of the international Argo program, measuring temperature salinity in the upper 2,000 meters. And the US contribute about 50%. There's more than 20 countries participating. For the glider picture in the middle, which is emerged in the last decade or so, it's kind of a slowly moving, swimming vehicle, almost like a float, except you put a fixed wing and then it can go in the horizontal direction about a half a knot or so. The right panel showing the relatively power-hungry vehicles and driven by propellers. They can go much faster, but with a shorter endurance. So as you get more increasing power, more capabilities, of course, you have increased the cost of operation and maintenance as well. So almost one of the biggest challenge for all these three class underwater vehicles and how to power them. All of them are powered by batteries. As you know, battery runs out and then mission is over. You either have a ship to go there to change batteries, or you can plug in on the deck of the ship to recharge the battery on deck and then redeploy them. Next slide. So C-Track kind of come in to looking for a clean, renewable energy solution in the ocean, because most of these underwater vehicles and swimming up and down, so they experience a natural occurring temperature difference in the ocean. It's warm at the surface and cold at depths. And this is kind of the unlimited free energy available over 70% of the global ocean. So what we have discovered is we can use phase change materials to take advantage of the thermal temperature difference and then convert the temperature difference into a thermal expansion. It's almost taking the solid material, you move from cold deep water to the surface, you melt the material will expand in volume. That's the kinetic energy we are harvesting into electricity. The same thing you can say, we are using liquid to vaporize them, like a traditional old tech ocean thermal energy conversion last 30 years, it discovered 30 years ago. So we have a patent developed of both technologies for solid to liquid phase change using a small low power device like float and gliders, and then liquid to gas, eventually getting to much higher energy output to serve as a power charging station for propeller driven vehicles. Next slide. Of the concept we have been proposing using in either solid to liquid and a preferable liquid to gas, so we can generate kilowatt hours on a daily basis. You can accumulate enough energy in order to power a AUV, for example, and then they go out to the mission for a day or two, and then by the end of the mission, you can come back to the charging station. It's almost like the electric car you're driving, and then you either dock and through this innovative connector in the middle, developed by Northrop Grumman, is for underwater wet-made connector. Essentially, you touch the surface, you transfer electricity, or there are companies developing wireless charging underwater. So if we have a way to develop a large amount of energy, and then we can provide this to charge underwater propeller vehicles in the kilowatt hours per mission. Next slide. This is under, the charging station is still under the development effort. What I'm presenting here today is the two of the commercial product focus on float and gliders are commercial ready. We have been developing a modular energy harvesting module, so you can attach to underwater floats. Left panel show you one of the two engine configurations, essentially provide 100% energy operated by the float. So the battery float have a limitation collecting 200 profiles. So with our system, essentially we can extend the mission life until the sensor. So we can increase order magnitudes of data collection. We can frequent profile every day or every 6 hours to improve hurricane prediction, for example. Or we can add more sensors, like Michael mentioned earlier, add hydrophones to detect sound in the ocean, to add echo sounder to map the seafloor. If we have 4,000 of this float already, if every Argo float carry an echo sounder, they can improve the seafloor mapping dramatically. The similar technology can be packaged in a different way to power underwater gliders. The picture on the right show you our commercial product to be delivered Q1 next year, and then we supposed to release in the Q2 timeframe, and then essentially extend the mission of the glider so they can swim further offshore away from the ship, and they can stay in the water, continue to carry out the mission as long as there's a temperature difference to recharge the onboard batteries. So Melissa, next slide. I guess I will conclude my talk, and this is a recent video we proposed to this DOE NOAA competition. It's a 90-second video. I will conclude my presentation by this video. Go ahead, Melissa. You can play. Cannot hear the sound.
By oceanographer Henry Stommel, who envisioned a network of 1,000 floats powered by the sea. The ocean has quite a story to tell, and floats, harnessing green energy from the deep blue, allow us to surface the narrative. But today's floats are not without limitations. Nearly 1,000 floats perish each year and fall to the ocean floor, along with their dead batteries. How can we sustain ocean observing without harming the ocean? SeaTrek brings Stommel's vision to life, creating energy that is for the ocean by the ocean. SeaTrek's energy harvesting system, commercially available today, extends the life of floats indefinitely, allowing for more sensors and rapid sampling. SeaTrek is ushering in a future where ocean observing is as green as the ocean is blue, a future with eco-friendly bots that are more powerful, last longer, and provide data to better predict hurricanes and protect the ocean and the lands it borders. A future where the heartbeat of our aquatic ancestor remains strong and resonant, and her story endures for generations.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Dr. Chow, thank you very much. I was very happy to hear at the conclusion of your presentation that you are pursuing the Department of Energy and NOAA prize for energy independence in ocean observations. I think that's very exciting. Well, if we can now, we'll ask Hans Petter if he would care to present, and then perhaps we can have a round of questions for both of you.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me. Can you put on the presentation, Melissa? And I'll try to make it swift so we have some time left at the end for some discussion. All right, here we go. So I don't know, for those of you that has been on for a few hours since earlier today, there may be a little bit of repeat from my colleague Jonah Margulis that made the presentation. But so I'm just going to talk a little bit about offshore wind. It's a topic that is very much talked about these days. It's very much hyped. But I'm just going to take a little bit of a segue from Aker Solution to a newly spun off company called Aker Offshore Wind, and how that also how we view the Asian market, and in particular what we're doing in South Korea. So you want to take next, Melissa? Yeah. So Aker Solution, we are an offshore engineering and service provider, which have been around for many years. We're a global company. We have around 15,000 people in various locations. We originally came out of Norway, so that's where our heritage is and our headquarters still. I think a common denominator from our existence or our establishment to today is that we've been all along adapting to society needs, and what really we can help to aid that in terms of whether it's electricity or energy in a broader term. So all the way from hydropower turbines, which we did 100 years ago, to shipbuilding, and then I think for the last 50 years or so, the biggest part of our company has been around oil and gas development, which has grown from nothing to a massive industry in Norway. But I think what we got engaged into offshore wind about 10 years ago, and there's been a massive development of offshore wind, in particular in Europe, and now we see that it's catching on in both in the US and in Asia to a high degree. But I think what we saw about 4 years ago is the trend that you're kind of exhausting the shallow areas where you have been developing offshore wind largely in Europe with bottom fixed foundations. And we saw that to be able to expand this and to provide the various places around the world with renewable energy at scale, you would have to move into deeper water. So I think when looking at that and matching the fact that we've been working for almost 50 years with deep water oil and gas development, it was natural for us to look into floating and deeper water wind development. So what we did is that we bought a stake in a company called Principal Power, which does floating foundations. And by the way, just announced today, we increased our stake in the company from 20 to 40%. But basically, the idea of doing that was combining their innovative wind float product with our experience in industrializing this at scale. So kind of what we also saw when working with Principal Power was that floating wind, as opposed to the bottom fixed wind in shallow water, it was very immature. There was some pilots out there, and we saw that to lift this, we had to get deeper engaged than just developing technology. We had to develop projects. So we started doing that in particular in the US, and also in looking at it in Asia, and later also in Norway and Scotland. So the result of this was that because this was growing to be such a big opportunity, our owners actually spun this out to a new company, which was branded Aker Offshore Wind, and was listed as a separate company this summer. So you want to take next slide? So I won't speak too much about this, but basically we went from this being born inside our technology and service company into being an actual development company and operator, which Aker Offshore Wind is. So a pure play offshore wind developer in deep waters, and basically utilizing the experience from working in deep waters in oil and gas and other industries. And we now have a quite significant portfolio of offshore wind development going on all around the world. You want to take next slide? I think just three main points about the rationale for deeper water and moving into that. I think to the furthest left is obviously that close to 80% of the potential for offshore wind in the world is in waters that are deeper than 60 meters. So if you are to bring the resource to the users, or the ones that need the energy, the clean energy, you have to go into deeper waters. So I think that is an important recognition. The other is that as you move further from shore, you often get more consistent winds. You get better winds, which is what you're after. You don't want the very high winds and then low winds. You want the steady good winds. So that's kind of also what you see when you go further out, that you can get to 50-60% capacity factors. And I think the third, which is also extremely important, is that you're able to locate your wind farm far enough out to not get in conflict with the other ocean users. So you can go to as deep waters as you like, and you are flexible about where you place it. So I think all of those 3 points are very, very important drivers for how to scale offshore wind beyond Europe. Do you want to take next? So right now, funnily enough, even though we're a Norwegian originated company, we had to start in South Korea and California to develop deep water winds. So I think what's really encouraging about South Korea and the other Asian countries that are pushing for offshore wind is that first of all, they have a huge need for electricity. They have a progressive governments that want to see renewables. They have a lot of people living along the coasts. And basically all the parameters for offshore wind development are very good. So our four focus areas in the markets today is basically where we have projects. It's in South Korea, California, Norway, and Scotland. So you want to go to next? I'll just round off with again some repetition around why we think Korea and which is similar to some of the other Asian countries is very interesting. So basically today, as I guess many of you on the call know, South Korea is heavily relying on fossil fuels for energy. And the South Korean government has been very vocal about wanting to grow significantly their renewable power generation from 8 today up to 2020 in 2030, and then further upwards. And they've set very progressive goals about specifically how much they want to see of offshore wind in the coming decade. So I think all those things are of course helping for us to make investments to lift projects in the region. I think another point which is very important, and why also we particularly are fond of working in South Korea, is that there's an excellent yard industry there. We've been Aker through the Aker companies. We've been working with Korean yards for many years, and they're top notch. And I think what also is been a driver for us now investing, and we have basically 1,500 megawatts in development in the Ulsan area, and that's largely driven also by the Ulsan city want to see a project coming to their area so that they can also occupy their yard industry and basically take advantage of building a new or converting their yards to also do offshore wind. So that's so we're one of the 5 consortium that have a MOU with Ulsan City for wind development off their coast. And I think just to round off, the latest development we did this fall was that we deployed, as you see on the picture, 3 LiDARs in these 3 areas, which are each 500 megawatt, which is kind of the first step towards getting lease exclusivity and constructing a project. So we are very bullish and positive about the offshore wind potential in Asia, and specifically in South Korea is extremely interesting in the coming years. So that's what I had.
Hans, thank you so much. That was very interesting. And the more I see these presentations, the more I learn from them. And the same for Yichao. I want to thank you as well for your presentation. Let me start first, if I can, with an opportunity in case Michael would like to ask a question. And I welcome anyone to either raise a hand or put a comment in the chat, please, if you have a question to be raised. I see one already from Matthew, but Michael, anything you want to ask?
Well, what I'd like to say is first of all, I think 2 great presentations, and the companies that are presenting this evening, just to show you the breadth of our membership. While Aker is not a member, they've just increased their percentage in Principal Power, that is one of our members, and their president sits on our board. So all 4 companies that are presenting are TMA members. And I want to show you, again, the depth and breadth of what we're talking about. And when you create clusters, our hope is that we will find the same kind of depth and breadth so that we can find ways to work together. And for the Korea Maritime Institute, where we have discussed finding opportunities, this is wonderful that Hans Peter and Aker Offshore is already there. And so maybe there's a way to work so that we can find a project that works across TMA BlueTech and what is going on in Korea. So I'm always trying to find what we call low-hanging fruit, ways to find win-win situations. So my comments would be great presentations, 4, and I know Brian, we haven't heard you yet, but 4 great companies presenting, and they're all looking for partnerships. That's why they're here tonight, to help you find their partners and opportunities to work together that are reciprocal, coming to the United States and coming to their countries as well. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Michael. I see the question in the chat from Matthew Valero asking, what are the infrastructure challenges for far offshore wind? I would extrapolate that, and I'm sure, Hans Peter, you probably have a good answer for that, but as I would look at infrastructure, it may be a rather open region that somebody has an opportunity. What's the shore side connects the circuitry or the national network that would be necessary, and then also the marine technology that needs to be brought in order to handle the infrastructure challenges. So over to you, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and obviously I didn't mention it, but it's also something when we're looking, as Michael said, for low-hanging fruit in terms of where we easiest can tap offshore wind. It's also a place where you can actually plug in the cord, right? So that there is a place not too far from the coast which can actually take a significant volume of power and transform it back into the grid of where people need the electricity. So I think in an area like in South Korea, that is also a huge benefit, that you have all these power plants along the coast, which have already very solid grid interconnection to transport the electricity back to the user, to the end user, without too much loss. So basically from let's say an offshore site of 20-30 kilometers offshore, which is what we're typically looking at as low-hanging fruit, then the transportation of that power is not really a big issue, because you can, with conventional HVDC or HVAC technology, you can send it back without big loss. But if you go 100, 200, 300 kilometers from the shore, then obviously it's a different challenge. And for one example, in California, we have the opposite thing in a way, where we're developing a project in North California, in Humboldt Bay, where the issue is that the wind speed is excellent, world class, 10 plus meter per second, but it lives very few people there, and there's no highway for the power to go down to the Bay Area or down to Los Angeles. So I think often that is the issue, that you need to try to find where these things fit together. Otherwise, it's a bigger infrastructure development. It's not so much that the technology is not there, but it's just that the cost of the threshold of building massive grid infrastructure is obviously costly and takes a lot of time.
So that's really the key, the grid infrastructure availability, rather than bringing resources, tools, ships, equipment, bringing it in for the installation, set anchors, moorings, etc. That's the easy part. It's really the infrastructure, which someone has to precede the installation of the wind farm.
Yeah, and like vessels and these things, you can always, as you say, bring in, but like a terrestrial or sea cable network is something which you have to make a big investment in. And I think one of the benefits of floating wind in particular is also that you don't need a massive vessel to do the construction phase. You can do the heavy lifting quayside, and then you tow out basically with a regular tug or a bit bigger towing vessel. So
thank you very much. Okay, quite a lesson. I'm going to shift over to Dr. Chow now, and I'm really intrigued by the power modules for gliders and for Argo floats as an example. And my question would be, is there a significant cost that you would see in the Argo float for adding the type of power extension that you have, and also relieving the burden of perhaps as many discarded Argo floats? But given that my agency, our responsibility to the world is right now about half of the Argo floats procured come from NOAA dollars. And if we could find a way to not have to dispose or lose Argo floats and extend the life of those floats, there is obviously a cost value in doing so. Would you have a rough estimate? Is it double the cost of the Argo float? Is it a narrow percentage of the Argo float in order to use the thermal power that you're talking about?
That's a great question. I've been talking to your colleagues, Dave Legler and Emily, the Argo program managers, so the Argo community as well. Argo is designed to solve a particular problem, monitoring climate, ocean and climate. So they are designed as a 5-year mission with the state-of-the-art batteries, kind of optimize the sensor collection. Our system come in in many different angles. So number one is the goal is try to eliminate energy as a limitation, so we can invest our effort, extend the life of the sensor, so we can further extend the lifetime of the Argo, so you can throw less waste into the ocean, number one. Number two, also you have a less recurring cost, so you don't have to put in 800 more per year to sustain a 4,000 float network. The real cost saving, the way I see it, is this increased capability of energy to power new sensors. So as you get to the biogeochemical sensors, the float doesn't cost $20,000 anymore. They cost $100,000. So basically, essentially, you 5 times the cost of the float. And then the float a lifetime actually decrease because you need battery to power the other sensors. So I think the profile data cost, it can decrease dramatically with our technology simply because we can help you to extend the sensor life. You do have to pay extra for our system. We cannot compete with dirty batteries. That's the cheapest option you can buy. But as you collect more data over time, as you add in more sensors, and then you will have more cost saving in terms of more data collection. And also, other thing, also in your agency, maybe different part of the office is in the weather prediction, hurricane prediction. They need more data less than every 10 days, like climate. So if the entire Argo array can be programmed to collect data every day when the hurricane season comes, you're going to deliver order magnitudes of data to the hurricane prediction models. And that value is dramatically increased by not decreasing lifetime of Argo. And to attach acoustic sensor, like Michael mentioned, that's really delivered the seafloor mapping data, the acoustic sensor data. So this is really, as you bring in those multi-sensor, multidisciplinary approach, expand the mission goal of Argo, that's where you see the real value of an energy system.
I appreciate your answer, and I look forward to following up with you as well, because both of those really do fall into our area inside of the products that we're generating, both for the Weather Service and for the research. I see an additional question here from Tamara, but I'm going to ask if Hans Petter could respond to Tamara, perhaps in the chat, about workforce demands and what the nature is and the availability, training of workforce, etc. But I'm noting the time, and I want to keep us on schedule here, where, as Dr. Chow mentioned, there are matters, including scientific sensing devices, that are ultimately deposited in the sea after their useful life is expended. And there are many matters that are deposited in the sea, and we as a science community would very much like to operate a clean environment. So let's shift then to ocean cleanup and protection. Yes, sorry.
I am so sorry to interrupt, but and I know we're trying to move for time, but Jerry Miller has his hand up, so if we could.
Sorry,
Jerry. So sorry.
Okay, no special favors, Jerry, but go ahead, please.
Okay, I'll just throw out my questions, and perhaps we can take them offline if necessary. But for Yi, I'm just wanting to say that it's exciting, the developments you have for power support, but I fear that there's a point of diminishing returns, because the sensors on vehicles like Argo drifters and gliders themselves begin to lose calibration after a while. So even if we had infinite power, the value of deploying such a system diminishes over time. That's one thing I would like to hear more about. Secondly, I think your developments could be very exciting in shallow water, where mapping with very high spatial resolution and also demands for better temporal resolution are perhaps even more intense than in the deep ocean. So duration of deployments in shallow water could be a good application for you. So I'd like to hear more about that. I realize we're up against a time constraint, and so Yi, if you'd like to just email me or call me separately, that would be fine.
It's good to thank for the question. I will follow up offline. I just to quickly answer the question for the more frequent sampling where our energy deliver more value, as you mentioned, and also Craig talk about the weather data. In terms of the sensor life, and then the community did a survey at Ocean Op 19 in Hawaii last year. Energy is clearly the biggest limitation. And then the second, the biggest limitation is sensor stability, accuracy, and the sensor life. So as we address the energy problem, I think the community will put in more and more effort in developing more stable sensors and developing anti-fouling technology. So there has been a slowly increase in terms of sensor life and stability, as you're aware, and then it's better. And then with energy, certainly help to make the sensor more stable and last longer. I will follow up offline with you.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Both of you have a good questions. I will follow up with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. All right, so now let's move on to Brian Bauer and his presentation on ocean energy and cleanup. So Brian, welcome, and the floor is yours.
All right, thanks again for having me. I'm very excited about working with BlueTech and TMA this year again. The plastic issue is huge globally, and specifically I want to talk today about all the partners that we've gained a lot through this organization and some of the key partners we're working with to drive ocean cleanup. And really it's about making it profitable. So what we do is we make a machine that takes waste plastics, especially those plastics that are not typically recycled, and we convert that to both diesel fuel, which will be around for quite a while, as much as we want to change that. But then secondly, the new development in the last 6 to 9 months is we're actually converting plastic back into naphtha, which is like gasoline, and convert that back into plastic. So high grade, pure plastic. So that way we don't have to drill out of the ground to create plastics, and greatly reduces greenhouse gases when you do that. So next slide. So imagine you can do something with a machine like ours and you can put it anywhere at any scale and be profitable. That's what we're all about, is being able to deploy all over the world where it makes sense. So we scale to whatever makes sense. Next slide. So the way we do that in the simplest form is we take the plastics, whether it's netting or post-consumer waste or post-industrial waste, and we chip that into little chips, and then we put that in our machine. And basically our advantage is we use microwave to heat, and basically that heat, it gasifies the plastic, which is basically breaking the chains down into smaller molecular chains. And then we put that over a catalyst, and that catalyst targets, depending on which catalyst you use, it targets it to either the naphtha to remake plastic, or into diesel, which can be used in generators to generate electricity, or in shipping vessels and so forth. So next slide. Again, our advantage is we use microwave, and that allows us to do what's called a fast pyrolysis. It's very clean and there's no burning, there's no oxygen involved, no combustion. Because we use microwave, we're like 1/10 the size of other reactors. That allows us to be very compact and operate in shipping container sized systems. So our 1-ton system is a small container, and our 5-ton system is in a 40-foot container. That allows us to be deployed on ships where, like for ocean cleanup, the #1 cost for ocean cleanup is fuel. We can develop the fuel right on the ship as we are collecting plastic. So everything from the ships, small islands. We're doing a lot of hybrid feasibility right now where we do both ocean and land plastics in the ideal sites. So then but we can also scale, like we talk about Tesla, the way they scale, they figured out a size of battery that is super reliable and proven, the Panasonic battery, and they make modules out of that. And we're doing the same thing with our reactor. So our reactors are certain size, it's very well proven. A lot of people who know microwave technology know that you can model, but you need to empirically nail the technology to make sure it works. And we've done that with this reactor. And then so we can take that and then just horizontally scale that to any size. But for oceans, it's a smaller project, smaller scale. Next. So I mentioned 3 outputs to our system. One is fuel. It's very low sulfur. There's no sulfur in our output typically. There's only sulfur there if that comes with the plastic that's fed into the system. So it works really well at any scale. We can put the fuel into Caterpillar generators, any island, any remote area, and process. So that's a beautiful standalone, underserved part of the world type of solution. And then on the flip side, on the very large scale, repolymerizing, when we output naphtha, It allows for big crackers like the big oil or big chemical companies. They can take this technology, put the naphtha into their crackers, and create really nice plastic resin. So in that case, we're most likely to bring our naphtha back into larger plants. And so we've signed 2 deals since the last time we all talked with very large chemical companies to do that type of thing. So we might do a licensing model for that. So that's a bigger scale. And then in any case, as I mentioned, we can use the fuel output, the diesel output for generators. That's fuel boilers, steam generators, electricity generators at the top there. So the next slide. That is actually our system. This one's been running almost every day in Santa Rosa. We've teamed with Recology, which is a very reputable municipal waste and recycling partner. They've also teamed with us and 8 other companies, local companies in Sonoma County that are post-industrial waste. So these are like caps and other products that just don't fit into baling. So they don't recycle. We put them through our system. So we have a whole slew of different types of customers and suppliers of plastic. And then most recently, I'll talk about in a minute, is the big ocean project. So next slide. When we step back and you look at the overall plastic issue globally, it's huge. 300 million tons are landfilled every year. We are just one player in this. It's real important, as we all know, to reduce the usage of plastic, reuse and recycle whenever possible. I broke the recycle down into both mechanical recycling, that's like re-grinding and making pellets. You can also chemically break back down and make pure plastic, and that's what we're doing. So next, you want to do everything possible to not incinerate or landfill. Incineration is very dirty for the environment, and landfill is a big problem. So next slide, where we play is in the chemical recycling and in the energy and the diesel fuel. And again, we play with a lot of players up and down that pyramid, and we're all doing our part. Next slide. So if you look at sort of a nice delineation when it comes to cleaning plastic, oceans, rivers, and land, ideally you cut it off at the source. So like that's why we're working so closely with Recology to recycle the 80% or so that they aren't able to recycle. So we cut it off at the land, but a lot makes it into the rivers. And globally, as we all know, most of the plastic going into the oceans is coming from the rivers. So we've teamed with Clean River Alliance locally here and looking at others like the Baltimore River, and Clearwater is another company in Asia they're working with in Indonesia and Singapore to clean rivers coming out of the mouth there. And then the Oceans Voyages Institute, they spoke last year at the conference. We're doing a great project with them. So anyway, those types of players, their focus is cleanup. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And what we do with our close partners on land or on the boat is to do the sorting and working with PET partners. So we don't actually process every type of plastic, but those plastic PET bottles, those are already well recycled, and there's a mode for that. But a lot of the other ones, the number 2, 4, 5, which is the polyethylenes and polypropylene, we readily, very easily process that in our machine. Next. So a great project that we're working on right now with one of the other partners, Trevi Systems, the other BlueTech partner company. We're addressing the plastics that hit the ocean in a big garbage patch between Hawaii and California. And what's really typical is, as much as the plastics, ocean plastics seems like it's a huge issue, if we were to put something on the island of Hawaii, because there's so much landfill type of plastic coming off the land, it's really it dwarfs what's coming from the ocean, even with the big cleanup efforts. The good of that is that that's very profitable to process into fuel and even more profitable into naphtha. That can help actually fund what's coming in from the ocean plastics and the ocean gatherers. So there's 2 ways we can help with the ocean cleanup. One is the fuel real time on the boats, but then also we can subsidize what's coming into the ocean if we share on like the Big Island here. Next. This is a great example of what we're doing. This just happened in the spring, summer, working with Mary Crowley and her organization, Ocean Voyages Institute. They just pulled out, that's about 150 tons of plastic, 340,000 pounds, from that ocean gyre near Honolulu, or they brought it back to Honolulu, and we now have a bunch of that we're processing and working with different shredders and so forth, so we can make sure we can address all the types of plastic that come in. Next. So this shows how we bring it all together. We call this Project Grand Slam, looking at doing this in Hawaii and Indonesia and other places. You have ocean plastic and landfill plastic coming in, different sources. And again, that delineation where we take over with our close partners on land is the sorting, washing, granulating. It's real important that we don't get too much salt in our system. So wherever we go, we team real nicely with compact water processors like Trevi Systems. They have a forward osmosis unit that we team with, and their system cleans the plastic before it comes into our system, and then we fuel a generator that fuels part of their system, but also the waste heat that's coming off of the generator greatly assists them. They love 180-degree heat to help reduce their power consumption. And so it's a nice circle that we work together on here. Next slide shows like a basic 5-ton system. What it would all look like, speeds and feeds. I'm not going to go through all of those, but 5 tons netting out into our system gives you a little bit of char, a little bit of syngas and diesel that both go into the generator. And then our waste heat and the generator waste heat goes in the forward osmosis system. So you can see their output as well, 1,000 cubic feet per day. Next, cubic meters. So this is a 20-ton system. It's just an increase in those feeds, those outputs. And then the next slide shows the revenue from this whole system. So the revenue, typically it depends on what your costs for electricity are and the value of fuel, but we look at it between a 10 and 30% return, like EBITDA on this type of system for profitability. So it's a nice interaction of multiple players. The last slide, go ahead, is a nice side benefit. I mean, the key to all this is to be profitable without credits, without government help, and it looks very good that way. But on top of things, there are carbon credits. And then more recently, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has developed a plastic credits method. And so a lot of larger companies are looking at doing that. And stay tuned for that. We'll have a lot more information on that, but we can get plastic credits on a system like this for recycling plastic coming in, and then also possibly for the naphtha as we make plastic coming out. That's it. Thank you so much. And we still are, next slide, we fully support the UN initiatives. Thank you. And look forward to working with people.
Brian, terrific. It's nice to see you again after your presentation last year, which was stirring. And I keep on imagining how appealing your system would be for small communities that don't want to be contributing plastic, or that as a small community may not have the market pathway for plastic recovery and delivery to a secure or safe treatment environment. So it's almost like you have the perpetual motion machine invented here. This is really stirring. So yeah, could you comment perhaps on where and how you've seen interest expressed from perhaps isolated or small communities, and how that would be an advantage? I think you were also talking last year in one of your presentations at this event to large scale. There are some military applications that were considered, but think of that full spectrum. Could you just score us in a little bit further on that, please? Yeah,
so they are really big players, but there's an organization, probably many of you have heard of, the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. It's formed by many of the large oil and chemical companies. They know that they're producing a lot of plastic. They are being held to the fire to make sure that that's not being wasted and to do what they can for that. So two things. A lot of them have initiatives like 30% of their plastics in 2030 need to be recycled. So chemically recycled or otherwise recycled, so they're not drilling it from out of the ground. That organization, they've pooled their monies together, about $1.5 billion is their target. And that's for projects, and largely a lot of them for remote locations. So they're looking at ways to do that. We're working with them to see which projects would make sense. But they pulled us in with an organization, an accelerator called Plug and Play. Plug and Play brought us together with the Alliance and pulled us into this batch. I say pulled us in, but we were very excited to be part of that. And that's where we've teamed with those chemical companies and have contracts now to work on the naphtha recycling. And some of those same organizations, like some of the largest oil companies in the world, have been advising us on how to use Caterpillar generators or other generators that seem to work really well in exactly those environments. So, and it's one of the reasons we look at first deployments being on islands where we can bring in the ocean plastic as well as different locations. And so we're working on what we can do together on that. We're teamed with a Surfrider organization and Ocean Legacy, Ocean Cleanup. I want to list them all, but I can't. Plastic Oceans, a whole bunch of people to clean up. And again, they bring it and they don't have to worry about how it's dealt with, and we take it from there.
It sounds like you've already answered what was going to be my next question, which is if you could identify the ideal, I wouldn't necessarily say partner, because I don't want to really imply any notions of the business interest, but the collegial interest that you could find. It sounds like you've already found them through the Alliance and through other means in order to be teaming up with comparable and contributory enterprises that help you advance even further. Maybe a comment or two about how this TMA BlueTech, the Alliance, has helped you.
Yeah, so I mentioned Trevi Systems. They're Trevi's, John Webley, and Michael. They pulled me into this organization. I'm so glad. It's been fantastic. People like, how do I forget his name? The guy at the polyethylene filter company. People who have
Jimmy.
Similar. What's that?
Jimmy Mullen.
Yes. Yes. People are really looking at ways to reuse plastic and then look beyond their plastic use and recycling, but then also how they can keep it from end of lifing in the landfill. Those are some wonderful partnerships. And then we run into all kinds of challenges. And again, not one company can do everything. That's why it's nice to have somebody like Trevi who's really compact and they have a low cost, low energy solution for cleaning the desalinating, because we don't want too much salt into our system. It's another great partner. And then collection partners, I mentioned some of those. That world it's a little bit competitive, but at the same time, it's such a huge challenge. It's like a shark. It's not really competitive in that there's a shark is competitive with another shark in the Pacific Ocean, but not really. There's so much plastic out there. We like working with people who know how to sort and who know how to, there's a lot of sorting technologies out there, lots happening out of Europe, but there is a lot of strong initiatives in Asia on this recycling issue. So with chemical companies, it's hard to navigate all the Asian countries if you're not there, if you're out in California. So people who know the different cultures that can work with distributing our product and operating our product, people who have expertise in operating. And then, to be honest, in some places it's important to protect intellectual property, and some companies are good at working with intellectual property and protecting that. So we're very interested in those partners as well.
Brian, thank you. I'm looking at the chat and such, but let me see if Michael would like to ask a question or make a comment at this point.
Thank you very much, Craig. Brian, it's always inspiring to see the progress you're making, and of course with John as well. It fits so nicely. It'd be really interesting for us now to hear from from Korea, from Japan, from Taiwan. You've heard 4 companies, and we really are doing this to show you kind of the kinds of companies, just representatives of great innovation, but we want to find out what your needs are. In case you say, those were all great, but I have another need. Or now that I've heard this, I have people that I would like to introduce them to. I think, you know, Mr. Kao, you're right now the one that's visible, but Hung Moy as well from Korea, and we had somebody from Japan here. So I'd love to get your input of, after having heard these 4 companies, do you see ways that you think, gosh, that really is useful? And you mentioned subsea sales, so we'll discuss that separately. But maybe the other companies, are there ways that you say, gosh, and Daniel as well, Daniel Hung, how do we tie companies together in your country, and how do we tie them with the needs that you might have in your country or anywhere that you know? And the same thing with Korea, and the same thing with Japan. So I'd love to hear from you at this point. Daniel, you are speaking, but we can't hear you, so you'll need, there you go.
Thanks, Michael. In Taiwan, basically, government, we will encourage the circular economy. And the one problem about the plastic solutions in the ocean or at the sea is also the common challenges for everyone. And in Taiwan, the government will encourage the innovations of such BlueTech. So besides the government support, we also have some companies from the private sectors. They were interdisciplinary to working together and try to provide a good solution for such challenges. Yeah.
Well, Daniel, since you were nice enough to speak up, when you heard what Brian is doing, are there towns or islands or areas where you say, I'd like to introduce him to someone or to the government? You know, again, what we're trying to do is find very specific ways to begin to work together, because that's how our clusters will really make the most value, is if we can find connective tissue, as we would say. So yeah. When you hear that, do you say, gosh, you're part of the government in a province? Did you say, gosh, I really need to introduce him to the waste management company here? Is there something more specific that you could think of, in this case for Brian, or for Yi Chao, or for Hans Peter, in terms of offshore energy? Any ideas that come up to you and Mr. Kao?
Yeah, Michael, besides the technology considerations, we still need consider about the we need to think about the market demand and the finance support systems to make such innovations can be realized to the market. Yeah.
Mr. Kao, how is it with you? Any ideas that you can see this would be useful, or a way to follow up with the Taiwanese government to use this also as a leverage point to create a cluster in Taiwan?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
Perfectly.
Okay. Actually, in the central government last time have announced the new policy about ocean cleaning project. I think it's just a begin. It's just for the beginning of the national project, not only for the central government but also the local government. And now now the central government just arrange the financial support it will become the annual project to ocean cleanup. But about the technology, I think maybe we can transport this technology if the company in Taiwan they have they have the development by themselves. I think this technology we can introduce what can be the medium to mix them to cooperatives. Yeah, but in this moment and next year, and the government will be investigate or how about the waste distribution of the on the shallow water or the coastal line. So this is just a new central government policy. So I think it will be have the very good future cooperative opportunities. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Well, anything that you think of after you've heard these companies, you and Daniel, in talking with the Taiwanese government agencies, again, what we're trying to do is find connective tissue so that it could be government opportunities, it could be companies, but most of these companies like Yi Chao or Brian or mine, we're not big enough to probably create an office in Taiwan. We will want to have partners there. And so it creates jobs in your country, but it brings in also innovative technology that you can also potentially sell in other places where your companies are active. Let me change to Korea. Young Mo, are you there? I think you were there earlier. If so, can you let us know what you think of for Korea at this point? Young Mo, are you there from the Korea Maritime Institute? If you are, you may be on mute. Okay, well, is anybody listening right now from the Shizuoka province or prefecture in Japan, and if they would like to comment on what they've heard?
Yeah.
I think I heard yes. Is there somebody
Hello,
on the phone?
Michael.
Yes.
This is Tetsuko from Osaka, Japan, Commercial Service Japan.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. It's first time to join the BlueTech week, and it's so exciting. And BlueTech sector is very new to me, but I've been closely communicating with Maoi, Shizuoka team. So now I'm thinking about maybe organizing a BlueTech webinar in Japan in, collaboration with Shizuoka Maoi people to connect US BlueTech companies and Japanese companies. So I want to suggest any team call with Michael and Maoi team and maybe Alan Davidson, who is online now. Think about how feasible we can plan and organize such webinar, kind of matchmaking.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I think it's very clear that the blue economy and BlueTech are critically important for the future of the world. And around the world, to have people like you working for the US government, helping our companies, is very important that you know about the incredible technologies that American companies and their partners, for example, the Aker people working with Principal Power, that have developed, and opportunities that create jobs in every country, in your countries and as well as our countries. It's not a one-way street. So any ideas you have, I know that we, TMA BlueTech, and our various member companies would really welcome the opportunity. And I think we had Joyce was on as well. Joyce Tang, are you on from Taiwan?
Yes, this is Joyce.
Hi, Joyce.
Hi, Michael.
How about you? I mean, do you have thoughts about these great companies? I know you were there on Monday part of the day as well. Any ideas of how we can promote the blue economy and BlueTech, and how you can work with Daniel and Mr. Cao as they are developing the blue economy in Taiwan? I wish I could travel. I would certainly want to come out and assist, but for the moment, we'll have to do it virtually.
Yeah, I think webinar will be a good idea during this COVID-19 period, because we are like not sure when this COVID-19 will be gone and when the travel restriction will be lifted. So I think we can like organize a webinar and have US companies to do the presentation to no matter Taiwanese government, local government, central government, and also we can bring in some Taiwanese agents who might be interested in this topic.
I think that would be very exciting. So Daniel and Mr. Cao, would you support that effort by Joyce and her team at the U.S. Commercial Service in Taiwan?
Yes. Before the COVID-19 restriction lifted, I suggested that we can continue the collaborations, and I will also study the government-related projects and try to build the three legs cooperation relations from Taiwan this side, and work together with TMA BlueTech, United States, and another Asia countries if possible. And we can continue to discuss and try to build the collaborations. Yes. Thank you.
You know, Daniel, you're the first person I met in Taiwan, and you have been actively promoting the blue economy and BlueTech. And as we would say, my hat is off to you. I admire your entrepreneurial nature and promoting this, and you're a government official, so you're doing what's right for your government. But I think it's wonderful that you have, I think, understood how we could maybe work together. So, and brought Mr. Cao in and others. So we look forward to working with you and Joyce and the U.S. people, as well as the Taiwanese side. And the same thing for people in Korea and Japan and other countries in Asia Pacific. This is not necessarily just a bilateral. This is truly a multilateral opportunity.
Thank you, Kirsten.
There's only one ocean. It touches us all.
Yeah, thank you, Kirsten.
Greg, I'm going to hand it back to you to, I guess, begin to do some wrap up, because, you know, it's getting late for you particularly, but people on the East Coast and people in Houston, and, you know, we've got people from all around the world. And I'm just so thankful that these three organizations, the Koreans, the Japanese, and the Taiwanese, for the first year have all participated, and you all were nice enough to be international cluster sponsors for us. And that means a lot for us, because we lost a lot of our funding from the city of San Diego and from the port of San Diego and from the county of San Diego. We get no federal funding, we get no state funding, but those three organizations have been really very supportive, and COVID has been terrible for them. And so you all have stepped up. Of course, our members have stepped up as well. So we're very thankful, and we see this as a stepping stone to further opportunities. And so I just want to thank you I wish you could be with us, and I wish we could come out and visit you, but we will do that when the time allows us. In the meantime, let's find opportunities for great companies and create wonderful relationships. So Craig, I'm going to hand it back to you. Thank you for allowing me to say a few words.
Oh, very fine, Michael. Thank you. I think the summation that you just generated here by providing an inspiration and a collegial embracing of our friends from Taiwan, Korea, Japan, and any other areas in the Pacific have really opened a door towards what we had recognized a few years ago, which is that we seemed to have a very successful recipe that was largely concentrated in North America and Europe. And as we begin to see an expansion now into other continents, this really may be the opening for the international collaboration of business interests across technology clusters with the Asia and Pacific regions. The prosperity awaiting everyone who joins has already been demonstrated, and it's just a question of how fast we can continue to develop. I think it would be very appropriate here to once again thank our colleagues from the U.S. Department of Commerce who work steadfastly in order to try and provide business opportunities and to engage and embrace the business community and truly do understand. I commend my colleagues from the Department of Commerce, truly understanding the value of a sustainable ocean economy. And if I take a big step back from what I heard tonight, in addition to the interest from our friends who are many time zones away, but of same heart and same mind for what we hope in the oceans and for the people of their country, economic prosperity in a sustainable way. But if we look back at the businesses that we heard from today, we're talking about that circular economy. We're talking about the collaboration, connection, and engagement of technologies that are in fact complementary, of technologies that are remarkably disruptive to the current norm. But I would promise you that even as Brian's point was made, that yeah, we're not going to run away from diesel or petroleum products immediately or anytime in the very near future. But as we taper off from that, we're starting to see the emergence of what will be the new normal, of wind energy, of plastics recovery, of energy solutions that are naturally occurring and really don't have to leave environmental footprints behind. So I am taken aback here in a very positive way to see through the tech clusters and the synergy, the accelerators that the technology clusters have generated by finding like-minded, but maybe different disciplines of engineering and science and the like, but bringing all those together to accelerate each other's gains. So I am buoyed once again by, number one, seeing the circular economy emerging through innovative minds, turning them into business opportunities that make revenue and make advantages and benefit for the ocean, not cost the ocean, which is something we're very dedicated to for sustainable blue economy. But then also to be expanding into a very important part of the world that may not be part of the conversation as rigorously until this year and these events, Monday night, tonight. And to close then, to thank our friends from Japan, from Korea, from Taiwan, and Michael, to you and the TMA BlueTech community for pulling this together. And I also want to thank each of our panel speakers tonight for excellent presentations, but even more so, absolutely amazing technology that underpins what you offered to us tonight. So Michael, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Greg, thank you. Thanks to all of you for a wonderful job this evening. We really appreciated spending the time with you. I'll just make a final plug for the U.S. Commercial Service. I think we've had 40 different people sign up from the U.S. Commercial Service around the world that will be involved in our BlueTech Week at some point this week. One of those wrote to us today from Kenya, and he asked if some of the Kenyan government people could participate on a panel tomorrow on combating IUU, illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing. And of course we said yes, but I think that's the kind of collaboration that is so critical, that somebody on the ground, in this case, US government, US Commercial Service in Nairobi, having government contacts, creating the leverage that hopefully will turn into a cluster in Kenya and opportunities for great technologies around the world to be used, not just in developed countries, but in the developing countries as well. So for all of you, the work you're doing, whether it's on the government side, the academia side, the industry side, you're all stars, and we really appreciate it. So thank you for being with us this evening. And Craig, as always, you are a star. Thank you for guiding us through this tonight.
Thank you.